Hey everyone, I'm Mandy with Runningboards Marketing, and I'm sitting here with our very first franchisee, Mark Federico from Massachusetts. Thanks for joining us today, Mark.
Thank you. Good morning.
Awesome. Great to have you. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what it was like to be franchisee number 001, joining an emerging franchise, and what your experience has been like so far. So first, tell us a little bit about your background in franchising.
Sure. It's not my first franchise. I've been a part of a couple other franchises over the last 15 years or so. In the fitness space, so I've owned multiple units of health clubs through franchising, and so I was kind of looking at just some different opportunities, and I came across Runningboards back in, towards the end of last year. And, I was interested in them for my other businesses. It was something that we could utilize for marketing purposes. And then as I dug into the company a little bit more, I became more and more interested and saw the opportunity, to become part of the organization. So that's how I got started.
Great. So tell me a little bit more about how you heard about Runningboards marketing for the first time.
Sure. I had been looking at different franchises, just researching them and kind of looking at different opportunities, over the last year or so, that I might be interested in kind of, pivoting out of the fitness space and into, just for a change of scenery. And in addition to that, I was actually out at one of our clubs. We were doing a grand opening, and I saw one of the trucks actually go by. I was looking at it more from a customer perspective. I saw one of these large billboard trucks drive by in, late evening, and I said, that's pretty cool. And that might be something that we could utilize, for our grand openings for our clubs, and just trying to get the word out from a marketing perspective at kind of the community level. And so when I got back to Massachusetts, I called into the company as a customer, basically just saying, hey, I saw your truck, so I'm interested in potentially, hiring you guys. I've 13 locations in Massachusetts, and they're like, well, we don't have any trucks in Massachusetts. So I was like, oh, all right. And so, then I said, well, how much does it cost to just buy a truck? And my thought was I would just buy a truck and have somebody from my clubs drive it around all day. And they said, well, we don't really do that, but we are a franchise. And so one thing kind of led to the other. And that's how I kind of said, all right, well, I'll do that then. So that's that.
Great. So did you have any reservations when you called up and found out that Runningboards Marketing was a franchise and that there weren't any other franchisees yet because it's an emerging brand? What were your thoughts on that when you found out you would be the first one?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really scare me. I've been, in the other franchises I've been in, I've been kind of an early adapter and got in early at those as well. And so, to me, I think that's an advantage. It allows you to kind of create, to work with, the team and kind of develop the product. I mean, it's still emerging. It's still growing. And I think, as we go through the process, as opposed to getting into there's pros and cons to each one, obviously, but when you get into, one that's an established, there's 200-300 units already in operation. I mean, everything is kind of locked down and set for the most part, right? They've already done it. They've built their business. They have the standards. Everything's kind of designed and that's that. I think with a newer franchise, with a newer group that's still evolving, you have the opportunity as an early franchisee to have input and to help grow the company and create it, with a team of other people. So I like the idea of being kind of early on. For me, I looked at it. I think a lot of times when people look at franchises, they look at it and you want that kind of proven success model. You can see, hey, there's 300 units, so it must, there's safety in numbers. But at the end of the day, I think when you look at a business opportunity and ultimately, when you start a franchise, you are running your own business. You need to look at it from a business side and say, okay, does this business make sense? And, and so for me, I didn't really look at it so much that there was other people doing it, and that made me feel comfortable. I looked at it more just from profit and loss sheet statements, and all right, do I believe that this will work? And so to me, it didn't really matter if there was 1 unit or 50 units sold.
Sure. So you you jumped in pretty quick and you moved along pretty quickly. Um, you got started during a pandemic, during COVID. So let's talk a little bit about that. What have your first several months with Runningboards marketing been like since you started in, I want to say around May or June of this year of 2020, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean, we really, I think we kind of got everything signed and everything, and then we didn't really officially kind of kick off until July. So yeah, we were definitely you know right in the heart of COVID, and being in Massachusetts, most of the stuff was completely shut down. I mean, most of our businesses are still operating at 40-50% capacity. Most stuff didn't really open up until around September. So yeah, it's been so for a few months it was you know um, challenging, right? So I mean, I think for that first couple months, we were definitely, touch and go in terms of, all right, how's this going to work? Trying to sell marketing during pre-pandemic levels. Um, you there, Mandee?
mhm, yep.
Oh, all right. It looked like you had frozen. Sorry. Um, so, to that point, I mean, I think, I had started the process at the end of last year, December, January, February. I'd kind of done a lot of my research. I had been out to Watertown in kind of the middle of a blizzard, I think, in towards the end of January or February. And so I'd done all my research. I liked the business. I liked the concept. It made sense to me. So, I just wanted to move forward with it, I guess. You know, COVID or no COVID. I mean, I didn't look at the business as a 1 month or 2 month thing. Definitely not an ideal time to start a company during this. But on the other side to that, is there ever a good time to, it's kind of like having kids, right? Is there ever a great time to have kids? It's just, if you believe in it, you want to do it, you want to have a business. I said, let's just go ahead and do it and figure it out. To that point, when I started, I had kind of bigger aspirations in terms of hiring more staff, maybe having more trucks, and so with COVID, I kind of backed off that a little bit, and I said, all right, let's kind of start off with a smaller scale, and then ramp up from there, versus taking on all this debt because we didn't really know exactly what the environment would entail. That said, over the last few months of doing this, it's actually been a lot more encouraging than I would have thought. There's a lot of businesses out there that are absolutely struggling, but then there's a lot of businesses out there that are finding new ways to be successful, and they want to get the word out and they want to drive that message home. So there are companies that have their marketing budgets, and those are companies that hey, what, right now might not be a good time, but we're building relationships and we'll be ready when we get to the other side. But on the other side to that, there are companies that are looking for unique ways to get the word out, and we have been able to grow. So it's actually been a lot more encouraging than I thought. Kind of kicking this off, I didn't really know what to expect when we started.
Sure. So let's shift gears slightly and talk a little bit about your truck. Now, the truck has a name, and it's
Yep.
DAVE, which stands for Digital Advertising Vehicle. Do you feel that Dave having his own persona, Dave's a dude, do you feel like that brings any type of extra, memorable experience to your clientele as you're going out on cold calls and doing sales with Dave?
I think the truck in general, right? You know, is unique, and so when you do, for anyone who's cold called before, walking into a business and trying to cold call or trying to sell a service or anything can be challenging, and a lot of times the person at the front desk or the reception just as a gatekeeper who kind of blocks you and has no desire for what you're doing, and it can be a process, right? When we drive up with Dave and we have a company's logos on there, we kind of put together some marketing pieces and we drive up there, 90% of the people, even if they're not interested, they're happy to see you. They're like, oh, what is that? That's pretty neat. They come out, they take pictures with the vehicle. So it really turns a cold call into really a warm call. So it's it's an easier way to get in. It's something that even in driving around, the other day we had 2 or 3 phone calls from people who had seen the truck, and thought, oh, that's pretty cool. That would work for my business, and called us to do that. And so, it's pretty unique. How much marketing do you see on a daily basis that you're like, oh, wow, I'd like to call in and find out more about that. So the truck itself sells itself. And I think that's kind of a unique thing right now in the marketplace. So, so I think that, the truck is definitely kind of something that is unique and helps, build the brand and helps from a sales side.
Awesome. Speaking of the sales side, sometimes we talk with candidates who are looking at joining the RBM franchise, and they might say, hey, I don't have sales experience. So what is that process like driving out with Dave? And do you think that someone without sales experience could easily sell, this product?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I think that the truck itself is does a lot of the selling for you, or at least it kind of breaks down the barriers from that. So it makes cold calling a lot easier. I think it's from what's unique about the truck is that I think when you drive the truck around and you pop into places and you start talking to people, people either get it or they don't get it. It's a very simple thing. I mean, they see it and they're like, wow, that's pretty cool. That will work for me. Or, that's not for us. That's not for our brand, or that's it. But it's really kind of makes life a lot easier. And if they are interested, they're going to tell you. And so it's not really, it's not that hard a sales cycle, really. I always, I think it's one of those things where, like, again, they see the truck and they say, all right, will that work for us? Will that work for our brand? We're not trying to convince them, to do one thing or the other. It's does that fit into what they're trying to do? And can they see that this is something that would potentially work for their, clientele or their marketing efforts? And from that perspective, then the sales side really becomes more of a consultative approach, where it's just like, okay, hey, right now we understand that, we're in COVID and budgets might be tight and there's struggles and there's this and that. And so let's put together a program or a solution or a subscription plan that fits your budget, that fits what you're trying to accomplish and works with your goals. So it's not too much of a sales job. You're not really trying to, they either get it or they don't, and they either are interested and they're not interested. And once you have that interest level, then it's just a matter of kind of working with the customer and finding out, all right, what are they trying to accomplish? Where are they struggling in their marketing efforts? And then, put together a plan that kind of will help them.
For sure. Now, you started your business more of an owner-operator to begin with, but I know that you brought on a driver pretty quickly as well. So let's talk a little bit about the different ownership types and where you started and where you plan to go with that in the future.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, and part of this kind of, evolved a little bit from, obviously with COVID, that kind of played a little bit of role in terms of some changes in terms of, how things were going to get structured and everything like that. And then, then that kind of affected, my previous, my other company that I have. So, originally I kind of looked at this and I said, this will be a nice opportunity to kind of grow into and maybe transition into and oversee more, moving out of my other businesses. And obviously with COVID, I think that kind of put a little bit of a hamper. I want to make sure that we get out of out of that issue, out of these issues and make sure that business is in a strong position. So my focus has kind of, changed a little bit. I think when I initially opened the club or the businesses, my plan was to really just be, to hire staff, hire a salesperson, hire drivers, and kind of ramp up pretty quickly and just oversee it and not maybe be active in the day-to-day operations as much, but just manage them. And so more of an investment, basically. But then, with COVID here, I said, well, geez, let's see how this works. I want to be more involved, make sure that, again, we're not taking on too much payroll and debt because we're not 100% sure how this is all going to transition during the pandemic. And then I also want to learn this a little bit better so that I can train staff. So I was more of a kind of owner operator. So, I hired a driver, pretty much right out of, right from when we started, basically right when we got started, probably in July, to drive the truck around. And then I would handle a lot of the sales stuff. So we would hop in and do some cold calls and, start working with clients. And we started to kind of build our base that way. But, in all honesty, I was maybe putting in 10 hours a week. I wasn't putting in a lot just because a lot of my focus was on my other company at the time. So we did that, for a few months, probably July, August, and then September. And then, towards, middle of September, I said, well, we're growing, but we're not really growing as fast as I want to grow. And I think that we have opportunities that we're missing out on. So I decided to bring on a salesperson in the start of October. So we hired our first salesperson, and we're starting to kind of get out and handle more stuff there. So we've gone from one driver to now we have two drivers, and the trucks are on the road basically from like 7 a.m. till about 7 p.m, Monday through Friday. And then we also have a salesperson now, so we're starting to kind of expand. And I think, my hope is, obviously, we should see some pretty significant growth between October and the end of this year.
Awesome. So where do you see yourself in 5 years with Runningboards marketing?
Well, hopefully we get out of this pandemic, right? So that would be the first start. So, but I do think it's a model that the business can grow significantly. Like, I think it's something that, for me, when I looked at the business initially, I wanted something that was easily scalable, and so for me, coming from the health club industry, where when we go and we open a club, it's a sizable investment where we might have to invest $2 million to build a club. Here, it's a much easier to build locations, get multiple units, and so I really think that our expansion opportunities are limitless. Really, what's nice about this product is, and even we're seeing that during the pandemic right now, right? Probably one of the toughest environments for a business, any business right now that we've seen for a while. And what we're finding is that with the marketing and trucks, there are some businesses that are struggling. There's some segments that are struggling right now, but there's a lot of other segments that are doing well. And so what we're doing is as we're going out and we're targeting businesses that might be interested in our services, we're just saying, okay, which companies are being less affected by this pandemic, and so home services, construction, painters, stuff like that, they're booming right now during this market. So we're just going out and targeting those. So I do think, one thing that's very interesting about, Runningboards is that it is kind of economy, resilient. So even when you have downsides, there are going to be businesses that do well. And it's just a matter of kind of focusing in and targeting on those, as opposed to if you're just dealing in one specific segment, that's been, kind of that gets hit hard by something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is a business that, long term can grow and really get to a point that, is very expandable. And so I think it's something that, we'd like to be, you know, all in Massachusetts and New England, over the next 5 years, and really kind of ramp up and grow to a point where, we're pretty large. So that would be I guess that's our goal.
Awesome. So where can people find you? Why don't you share your website with us and where people can find you online?
Sure. So if anyone has any questions or anything, they can kind of follow us online. We are RBM CMA. So it's just go to www.rbmcma.com. And that's just, Runningboards Central Mass. That's probably the best site to come in and find us. And if you have any questions, we're also on Facebook under RBM CMA. You're more than welcome to, email or message us. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Fantastic. And for anyone that's interested in franchising with Runningboards Marketing, you can also visit our website at rbm-franchise.com. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and best of luck in your RBM business.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.